Welcome! Today we're going to do Terra Sigillata. And unlike the first video I did, I'm going to try and make a Terra Sigillata that is wider than the one I already have. So let's just get on with it. So what is Terra Sigillata? Basically, it's a very fine particle clay that you can apply to a pot to make it more shiny. You typically use it on low-filed pottery, pit-filed pottery, for example, as I do, to get that shiny surface without actually having a glaze. You can also burnish a pot and get that shine in other ways, but I like to use Terra Sigillata. It's a very easy way to get that super nice shiny feel to your pot. You can use almost any kind of clay. Red art, ball clay is probably one of the more common ones, but you can also dissolve the clay you usually use, as long as it doesn't have too much grog in it, because you need to fill that out anyway. The only clay that I heard, I didn't try it myself, that doesn't work is bentonite. It is already too fine. But all other kinds of clay. I like to use ball clay, and that's what I used in the past. I made a video already about how to do that, how to color it, how to apply it. But today I want to make a Terra Sigillata that is a little more white. And to do that, I was kind of looking around and I was hoping to find some good ideas for how to maybe include some EPK, which is like a porcelain clay that is more white. I was afraid of doing it only with porcelain clay. And maybe I want to add some tint to it as well to make it even wider. I will see once I get the basic batch done. I have this wonderful book that I can recommend to anyone. I hope you can see it here. It's a really, really good book if you're into low-fire pottery of any kind. Lots of inspiration. But in this book, they also have a very good recipe for a Terra Sigillata that includes EPK. I don't know if you can see there, but I'll bring the recipe. Basically, it's still mostly ball clay, but then they add some EPK, and that's what we're going to do today. So besides the clay, you also need something to deflucate the material, because you add the clay and the water, and then you need something to release the suspension. And so you can have the heavier particles settle on the bottom and the lighter particles on the top, and that's what you're going to siphon in the end. To do that, most people use sodium silicate. You typically buy it in a builder house, Home Depot or something. For my Danish viewers, it's called Vandglas in Denmark. Don't buy it in a pottery shop. Go to Bauhaus or something. It's much, much cheaper. And it's the same. It's a very common compound. Most people just use that, and it's good. But for reason apparently unknown, a combination of soda ash and sodium silicate should work even better. I never tried that, so I'm going to do that today. In this recipe, there's about 1,400 grams of dry material, and that's what you use to calculate how much deflucate you put in. So for this recipe, it's roughly about 7.5 to 8 grams. And in the recipe, they just recommend sodium silicate. But I'm going to divide it into two. So about a quarter of a percent of the dry weight material. That's what you're going to use. So we're going to use about 4 grams of soda ash and 4 grams of sodium silicate. That's very, very little. Now, sodium silicate usually comes in a fluid form and soda ash in a dry powdered form, but just weigh it out as if it was both dry forms. So I'm just going to use these small bowls here to measure it. So let's see. It is very, very little, surprisingly little, but it is enough to deflucate. I'm just going to add this. So that's 4 grams. It is very, very little. And we're going to take some of the soda ash. So that's it. Now I have 4 grams of soda ash and about 4 grams of sodium silicate. To make it easier to dissolve into the water, I'm just going to mix it up into, I put some boiling water, just a very, very little, oh, no, I'll get it all over myself. Some boiling water. I'm just going to add it here. I'm gonna mix everything into to the big jar that I have as well. But this is just going to make it easier to dissolve into my big pot. Yeah, and the soda ash dissolves very easily. So, I think this is good. Gonna put this aside. Then you also need some container for your mixture. Basically what you do is you mix the dry materials with the water and the deflucant, and then you leave it. And it's very important that you leave it without touching it, because it needs to settle, and if you move it around, then it's gonna flow around. So you need to put it somewhere where it can stay, and preferably a little bit high, because once you're gonna siphon it, it's gonna go down, and then you need some space to do that. So I have this container, it's about 5 liters, so that should be plenty of space. First I'm gonna add some water. The only reason I'm gonna do that is because if you add some water first, then when you put the dry material in, it doesn't make so much dust. So that's the only reason. So put just a liter of water in there. Maybe I'll put a little bit more. I'm going to use for this recipe 3.3 liters of water. So let's put this aside, and then we're going to measure the dry materials. It's not important what order you put it in. I'm going to start with EPK. And in case you can't get EPK, I'm sure you can use some other sort of kaolin. I just have EPK around here, so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to need 316 grams. So let's see how that works out. Yeah, I think that's about right. So, I think we got it almost right. Yeah. Let's see. Can we get it to 20? Yeah, 11:20. So I'm gonna add that to the mix. It does leave a little bit of dust. I should probably wear a mask. I didn't do that. So don't do like I do. So now we have the basic mixture, and now we're going to add the sodium silicate and soda ash to the mix. And now the rest of the water, and I already measured that, so 3.3 liters. Hope there's enough space there. There should be. Yeah, there's just enough space. Just gonna put the lid on. And I got a little bit of water around me. That can be cleaned up, so I'm just gonna do that now. So now we have this mixture, but now we need to make sure that it's melted well. Some people like to use a sort of a blender or some machine. You can also just, when you have a container like this, you can just shake it around really, really well. The important thing is that everything is dissolved. And I think this is pretty good now. Yeah. So now we just need to set it aside. And as I said, it's very important that you don't move it around now, because you need things to settle. And if you move it around, you're just going to shake it up again. And you need to leave it for exactly 20 hours. It's one of those mysteries again. I don't know exactly why 20 hours work, but people much wiser than me have done a lot of testing with this. And for some strange reason, 20 hours is exactly what it takes. So I'm going to leave this in another room, and they're going to come back to you in 20 hours, and we're going to siphon it off. What we essentially want is that we want all the heavy particles to settle at the bottom, and then we want the light particles, the small particles of clay in the top. There's going to be typically a little bit of pure water at the top, but then it's like the middle layer, which is the ballpark of it, that we're going to siphon out, and that's our Terra Sigillata. Now, 20 hours later, the Terra Sigillata have settled, or the mud mix, what it is now. And it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can see at the top here, there's some pure water. And then there's a middle layer with just the Terra Sigillata. And down here, you can kind of see it. It's a little bit difficult to see, but there's some mud that's settled. That's all the heavy particles that is settled down there. So what we need to do is siphon out the middle layer. This is the Terra Sigillata. And to do that, I have this plastic tube. You can also get siphon equipment that is usually used in wine brewery. You can get it in stores like that, but this plastic tube works great. And then I have prepared a bucket to siphon it into. So I'm going to put this on a lower position, and I'm going to put the tube in, and I'm going to suck in the Terra Sigillata and hopefully not get too much in my mouth. It doesn't taste too good. And remember, once again, don't shake this around, because then you're going to get all the heavy particles up into your Terra Sigillata, and you don't want that. So just be very careful when you open it, and it should be fine. So we want to make sure that we put this tube deep enough so we get the Terra Sigillata, but not so deep that we get the mud or the heavy particles at the bottom. So let's go ahead and see how that works. Yeah, I got a little bit in my mouth. It's okay. It's just mud. So now it's running out, and as you can see, it goes really quickly. And this is nice and very fluid. And you can sort of see where the tube is in the. And I mean, don't take out too much, because it's so cheap to make that there's no reason to risk the Terra Sigillata. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop with that. Maybe we could have taken just a few more drops, but again, the cost of wall clay and EPK is so low that there's no reason to try and push the limit. So now we have the Terra Sigillata. Next step, we need to measure the specific gravity to see if we got what we want. We're aiming for a specific gravity of 1.15. So that is a very light fluid. If it's less than that, it will be more watery, and you will add more water to your pot, which could lead to cracking and problems. And if it's more heavy, above 115, then you may risk applying too thick of a layer and it will flake off. So all experience say that 1.15 or maybe a little bit less than that. I can see that some producers of Terra Sigillata have it a little less than that, but somewhere between 1.23 and 1.5 should be good. So let's go and measure that. Measuring specific gravity can actually be done very, very simple. What I do is I have this tube. This is a cheap plastic tube that I bought. It's also from the brewery, home brewery shop. And what I did is I put it on my scale, and I weighed it out, put water in, pure water, and I weighed it out 100 grams of water. and then I put a mark. So that's my mark. Now, when we need to figure or measure the specific gravity of anything now, we put it back on the scale, reset the scale, and then put whatever fluid we have in it up to the mark. Whatever it reads out here is the specific gravity. So we are aiming for 115 gram. That would be a specific gravity of 1.15. So let's try and do that. I'm just going to suck it up with this syringe. That's just an easy way to do it. As it turns out, it's actually on the light side, so it's only 1.07, which is actually a little bit too less, not quite enough. So what you can do is you can just leave it out here, or you could put it in a pan and heat it up to speed up that process. For now, I'm just going to leave it here on the table. It's still summer and quite warm, so it will evaporate rather quickly. So in a few hours, I will try again and see if we got a better reading. So now, after letting it evaporate a little bit, it's now 114, so a little bit on the light side, but I think that's gonna go. This Terra Sigillata is hopefully wider than the ones I made before because of the EPK. And in case you're wondering, the noise in the background, that's my children making food for me, making dinner. They even went down to shop. I'm such a lucky man. Amazing kids. Anyway, that gives me time to play around with my stuff here instead. So in an attempt to make it even wider than what it probably already is, I'm going to add some tin oxide. You could also be using packs or what it's called, the different other substitutes. Tin oxide is quite expensive, but we're going to use very little. I haven't done this before, so I was researching a little bit to see what other people have done. And the closest thing I could get up to was that some suggested 1 teaspoon for every US cup. And a US cup is about 1/4 of a liter. So I'm going to use half a liter of the newly made Terra. Make sure that you mix it up properly. It does settle, but it's very easy to mix up. But there will be a little mud on the bottom if you didn't mix it up. So this is half a liter. I'm going to put it in here, like that. And put this aside. And then I'm going to use 2 teaspoons. Now, ideally, when you mix oxides or stains or anything into the Terra Sigillata, you would put it in a ball mill. A ball mill is like this sort of drum where you have these little balls, typically of stone or marble or something, and you let it run around for 24 hours or something. A real ball mill is super expensive. I don't have that. So instead, I'm gonna grind it in this one. Make sure to clean it. Probably again, I will use it for food. So I'm gonna take 2 teaspoons, which is not a very accurate measurement. So actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure how much I think 2 teaspoons will be. Teaspoons, of course, is not a very accurate measurement. So for future reference, I'm going to weigh out 2 teaspoons and see how much it actually is. So just put the scale on 0, and I'm adding 2 teaspoons of tin oxide, which is about 10 grams. So now we have that as a reference. 10 grams for half a liter of Terra Sigillata. Of course, I don't know if that's going to work, but it's probably not completely off. So now, basically, I'm just going to grind this. The tin oxide is a very fine particle, so it's not actually, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but just to be sure, I will give it an extra grind to make it as fine particles as possible. The problem is if the particles are a little too coarse, if they're not fine enough, then it will influence the shine and essentially making it less shiny. So we don't want that. But I think this is going to be good. I'm just going to clean this. Yeah, that's a wonderful sound, isn't it? So that's it. And of course, with this little amount of a white powder in a white fluid, you won't actually see anything. I do hope that it will make a difference to the final Terra Sigillata. So that's it. Now it's ready to use. I keep it in these jars because they are airtight, and so they can stay like this forever. And in case it dries out, you can just add a little more water, and if you're in doubt of how much, you can measure the specific gravity again. In fact, some people store their Terra Sigillata in powdered form. So they let it dry out completely, store it powdered form, and then whenever they need a new batch, they add the water to it. You can do that. The Terra Sigillata is not suffering from that treatment, so it's perfect. So we're going to put this aside, and I'm going to try and use it. I will also be mixing some other colors. I had success using red iron oxide. Of course, gives it this dark red, almost brownish color. You can also use stains, mason stains or the similar stains to that. It's a quite fine particle as well. And then you can use other sorts of oxides. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, comment, share, whatever you like. Now I will soon have some dinner, and then I will go and try my Terra Sigillata.